Hi.
Okay, we're live, Robert. Hi, and welcome to our live conversation. Richard Ashby is unavailable today, so we're going to be interviewing Robert Aiden, and he's from our tax team in place of Richard. Richard wrote an article about
Remote Services GST and the upcoming Amazon tax.
Great. Okay. So, Robert, can you tell us a little bit about your role in Gilligan Shepherd?
I work closely with Richard Ashby, where I produce tax opinions and negotiate with the IRD as well as any other tax-specific queries. I also work on the BAS team, which is Business Advisory Services, where we provide general compliance and general business advice.
Okay, thank you. Great introduction. Netflix tax came into play 1st of October 2016. Amazon tax is going to come into play 1st of October 2019. Can you explain the difference between Netflix tax and Amazon tax?
Netflix tax came in a little bit earlier, and it was effectively a remote services GST. So if someone signed up for remote services, so they were being provided with music or streaming on a monthly basis, or even professional services, GST had to apply to the transaction. The Amazon tax will extend the purview of that to include one-off goods. It used to be that an individual was granted relief from GST if they were purchasing goods from overseas and they were below $400, but this will eliminate that. So that's why one is referred to as the Netflix tax and one is referred to as the Amazon tax. The Netflix tax was for regular monthly services or monthly services provided online, and the Amazon tax is for goods now under $400 that are provided to the consumer.
Okay, so it does sound more about charging it to non-business individuals, so they're going to charge the GST to them. Does that mean that if I buy items through my business, I won't have to pay the GST, or am I paying both? What's the deal with that?
So the providers of either a service or the goods check with the individual purchasing them before they purchase that they are GST registered in New Zealand, and also that they are going to use the goods or service in furthering their own taxable activity in New Zealand. So it's not enough that you be GST registered, you also need to be using the goods or services to further a taxable activity. If that's the case, no GST is charged. If you make a mistake, then there is also a reverse GST clause. So say, for example, you purchased a Microsoft license for your business, but you wound up using 50% of it for your personal use. You would have to put an adjustment in your GST return to return the other, what should have been 50% GST charge to you.
Okay. Sounds pretty complicated if you ask me. So if an overseas business registers for GST with New Zealand, then they sell the products to New Zealand with the added GST, and they don't sell enough, what happens to the GST that they've collected? Is that going to be that reverse tax you talked about? Or?
So if an overseas business thinks that they're going to cross the $60,000 threshold and they register for GST, regardless of whether or not they cross that 60,000 threshold, they are obligated to return GST. It would just be a case of really thinking about whether or not they were going to ever cross the $60,000 threshold, and if it proved that they weren't going to, they would deregister.
And would they get their GST back?
No. Once you're registered for GST voluntarily, you have to return GST for the period that you're registered.
Right. Okay. All right. So do you really think that the likes of Amazon and AliExpress have affected the New Zealand retailers? Because surely the ability to collect the item immediately plays a part.
That is one of the arguments for this tax, is that GST is now acting effectively as a tariff on local producers of products. So individuals compare the price of the same good obtainable from overseas as they would from even an onshore retailer, and the presence of GST will naturally it will naturally push them towards the cheaper overseas option. So I'd say rather than immediacy, because you still have to wait for the product to be delivered, people are moving towards it for one, the cheaper price associated with the lack of GST, but also if businesses were honest, these overseas businesses are acting on a larger scale and they're spreading the cost of their overhead over more product.
Okay, so then people are going to be out there saying, do you think that the government's being greedy by imposing this tax? I mean, we've all been using Amazon up to now, and we've been all happy with getting our goods GST free, and we've enjoyed that. Do we now think that the government's just being greedy? They're just imposing a tax for what reason?
This is part of an international effort by most countries to start taxing these transactions. There is a wider global concern that these entities, like Google, are not paying their fair share of tax, and they are and that consumers are able to take advantage of e-commerce to avoid paying tax on transactions that they normally would. So in addition to the argument that local businesses effectively have a tariff imposed on them by GST normally, there is an international effort to move towards this anyway. So I would view it more as an inevitability rather than greed on the part of the government.
Okay, so then that begs the question of what about professional services such as accounting or legal? We sometimes use those and get consulting services from overseas, or people are using New Zealand from overseas that is exempt at the moment.
So that is dependent on the equivalent legislation in the country you are exporting those services to, essentially. So under the GST Act here, when we export services, it is GST exempt. Say you were exporting services to Germany, we would be, if we were going to impose GST on it, it would be because the German government brings in something similar to the Netflix tax or the Amazon tax, requires us to register for GST or the equivalent VAT over there, and then we take tax off of that and return it to the German government. So this isn't going to impact the export of services, but we are awaiting other countries bringing in the equivalent of this.
Right, okay. All right, so I understand that. So then if you knowingly avoid paying tax for online purchases, because I'm presuming it's a little bit of an honesty system where you tick boxes as you do your returns or as you're ordering your stuff. Is that how it's going to work? I'm not sure how's it, because if I think of it, I think, well, I've just been ordering stuff through Amazon. You're now saying that they're going to check to see if you're GST registered, and then if not, they're going to put the GST on. Is it just us ticking a box saying I'm GST registered, or is it, and if I say, well, I'm GST registered, but I'm not, how does that happen, and how do they find out? And then what are the actual charges and offences for that?
Hypothetically, the way that they would find out is when one of these entities provides a GST return to the IRD, they can also be asked to provide the list of all of the transactions through New Zealand that are business to business. And in order for them to qualify a transaction as business to business, they do have to have made these checks. They have to have checked that you, one, have a GST number or a New Zealand business number, and they also must have had assurances from you that you are going to use this in furthering a taxable activity. So the way that an individual at the moment could hypothetically be picked up is that, say, Amazon, for example, would provide this list to the IRD, and the IRD would run a finger down it and pick out people to check. And if it then proved that you had misled Amazon, that's when they would start looking at you.
Right.
And as for how realistic that is or how likely that is to happen, we don't know yet. But 2 years ago, even the IRD said that they were very pleased with the voluntary response to the Netflix tax that they saw from larger providers. So they're relatively happy with this so far. Okay.
Was there anything else in the article that Richard wrote that you think you should let our viewers know about, or you think they'd be interested in? Remembering we do have the live conversation on at the moment. So if you want to put some questions through, send them through, and we will answer them while we're still on. After that, this is going to be available in our website, which is gilliganshepherd.co.nz. So the live streaming will be available there for you to watch later. But if you've got any questions, send them through, and while we're talking for a little bit longer, we'll get those answered for you.
The only thing that I would say is that practically, if you think you're going to be one of these entities that is going to trip either one of these taxes, it's best to register sooner rather than later, or rather pick the date you think that you're going to trigger this and register with that in mind. Don't leave it to the last second, because the IRD systems for dealing with any kind of GST registration or IRD system is quite slow.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
it is slower than overseas individuals are used to from their equivalent tax agents.
Okay. So this is definitely, those people that have stayed at home and they've ordered some stuff online and then they've sold them. This is definitely going to trigger a response to those people.
So if they've ordered, clothing or anything for cheap online, it is at this stage, it is up to the individual retailer to register with the Inland Revenue Department. But they seem to believe that their uptake into the system will be quite good. So certainly from some of the larger entities that yes, I would expect that to start impacting people. Okay.
So do you think if I'm just thinking about it, so do you think it's geared more to trap, or not trap, but is it geared more so that individuals are going to be paying GST on things, or is it geared more for those people that are actually buying in bulk and then just selling them offline as well in New Zealand? Do you think, where do you think the whole thing's come from? Like, why have we suddenly decided that this is necessary?
I think they are just it is just many steps in a process to fill up gaps in the tax system, the traditional tax system, that have arisen because of e-commerce. There are more complicated issues for international tax that the international community is still dealing with, but this is one of the simpler holes I think they see that they can plug.
All right. Okay. Cool. Well, that's probably all. We've got a few questions that I had, and I haven't got any that have come through at the moment. So we will. We do have a question that's come through. We'll just wait for that to come through to my phone for me so that I can ask it, or can you see it, Robert?
Do you expect the government to do the same for those involved in rideshare, Uber and Lyft? That
interesting.
That is arguably dependable on whether they are overseas entities at the moment. I don't believe they are. Uber is an onshore service that's provided to New
Zealand clients.
To New Zealand clients as it is. So GST should be applied to that as it is.
Yeah. Okay. All right. I'm pretty happy with that. Thank you very much for joining us.
Okay.
We'll all go back to work and continue on. But if you've actually got any questions, or you thought today was really interesting, we'd love your feedback. So send us an email. You can send it through to Gilshep, which is GILSHEP @gilshep.co.nz, and we will get in any answers for you, or if you have anything that you actually want to say, then you're welcome to do that. Thank you very much.